Up next, we have Adrian Rose, CEO of Norsk, who will be bringing you a first look at the all-new Norsk Studio. Last year, Norsk launched with a low-code SDK for building complex live media workflows. And now with Norsk Studios, you've gone from low-code to no-code. Is that right?
That is indeed correct, yes.
All right, well, take it away.
Thank you very much. I will jump straight into a screen share. 1 second. Hopefully people can see.
Yeah,
make life easy. Cool, thank you. So yes, we launched Norsk at Streaming Media East last year, and what Ideas has been about since kind of day one is we've built large-scale, complex, live media workflows for companies like NASDAQ and DAZN and Arkiva and so on. And we've always wanted to be able to kind of bottle the magic and make it so that anybody could build the kind of workflows that we used to produce without having to deal with the underlying complexity. And in particular, we think that there's kind of a lack of ambition in some solutions that get put together, because you either take something that's off the shelf and you live with whatever its capabilities are, or dipping your toe into custom live media workflows is a extremely complex task, and Norsk is all about that. So two halves to Norsk. One is the sort of media manipulation side, and that's kind of where we'll focus on today. So Norsk Media itself is just a container. What you'll sometimes hear me refer to as the green code is the kind of code that our customers and or systems integrator partners write to sort of put together a specific workflow for a potential use case. But an amazing kind of media workflow is of no use to anybody unless it's running somewhere. And so there's kind of an optional side to Norsk as well, which is our management capability, which will run that, will instantiate those workflows on hardware, especially accelerated hardware. We have very wide support for things like NetInt and the AMD accelerators and NVIDIA and so on, in various different cloud environments such as Oracle and AWS, but also on-premises and increasingly common hybrid type solutions. So, but we'll concentrate on the sort of visual side of things today with Norsk Media. So there are kind of two different ways that you can access Norsk Media. One is, as I mentioned, the low-code SDK, and we'll just touch on that a little bit because Studio kind of builds on top of that capability. So you can actually program Norsk in any programming language that's gRPC capable, which is any programming language, but just about everybody uses our TypeScript SDK. We'll touch on that initially, and then we'll look at how that's being extended to a kind of visual paradigm and a no-code capability as well. So forgive the code, but it's kind of super straightforward. This is the kind of Norsk SDK 101. This is about the simplest application you can put together. So it starts by saying, I'm using Norsk. This first line. Then I'm going to have something called input, which is an SRT input. I'm then going to have something called output, which is a WebRTC output. WEP, if you're not familiar with it, is a WebRTC introduction protocol, but just think WebRTC. And then the last line is joining the dots. It says, I want my output to subscribe to the input, in particular, taking the audio and video. And that's it. I've got an input, I've got an output, and I've drawn the dots. That's all there is to it. And when you're operating at scale, we've been very kind of firm believers that real transparency and access to runtime information is super important. That's what allows you to go from I have 1,000 events running concurrently and they're all really happy to I need to go and talk to this particular CDN endpoint to go check out why it is that they're not accepting the stream we're trying to send them. To that end, we support a standard called OpenTelemetry, which kind of means that it's very, very easy to pick up runtime information from a Norsk system into anything. But one of the ways we visualize that data is using this workflow visualizer. So if you visualize that last program on the previous slide, what it says is we'd like a transport stream over SRT coming in. We'll take the audio and the video from that, and we'll publish it as WebRTC. So that's all fantastic. Now, excuse me. Those of you unlucky enough to be familiar with the details of WebRTC will hopefully be throwing your hands up in horror at this stage, going, Adrian, that program has absolutely no chance of working. And you'd be right. But the good news is Norsk knows that, so you kind of don't have to. So if you want to know, this is what you asked for. If you want to know what actually Norsk had to do in order to deliver that workflow, you can click on this little show conversions button, and it says, well, this is what you asked for. This is what I actually did. So in particular, WebRTC only supports one audio codec, and that's called Opus. Opus, you can't even put into a transport stream, at least not without using kind of non-standard extensions. So on the face of it, this program here is doomed to failure, other than the fact Norsk knows that it's doomed to failure and will take appropriate steps to make sure that it works for you. So it says, turns out you sent me some AAC as part of that SRT source. I converted that into Opus for you and published that audio. And you sent me some video, which was H.264. That's great. WebRTC supports H.264. You might have sent an MPEG-2 video, for example, which it doesn't, in which case it would have done a similar job converting for you. And that H.264 was nearly right. It was MPEG-4, MP4 encapsulated, whereas WebRTC insists on Annex B encapsulation. So I fixed the encapsulation for you. Now, if the words like Annex B encapsulation mean nothing to you, A, I'm very jealous, and B, that's exactly the point. Yeah, the fact that WebRTC requires Annex B encapsulation is of no value to your customers, the people consuming this media experience. They just want a stream that has fantastic content at great quality and appropriate latency and so on and so forth. So these kinds of details here are a kind of technical cost of doing business, as opposed to anything that adds value to the end product. And Norsk is there to get rid of all of that and allow you to concentrate on the end-to-end consumer experience that you're creating. So here's a Norsk program that does HLS and Dash publication via CMAF. So again, we're using Norsk. This time we're taking the content in via RTMP. We're going to create an audio CMAF packager, a video CMAF packager, and a multivariant that sits on top of it. And the rest is just joining the dots. I want the audio CMAF packager to take the audio from the input. I want the video CMAF packager to take the video from the input. And I want the multivariant to take the outputs from the two CMAF packages. So yeah, we've got a couple of components, and we're drawing lines between them. That's all there is to it. And at its heart, that's all there is to Norsk SDK. You've got a whole bunch of inputs, you've got a whole bunch of outputs, and then you can do stuff in the middle. And you can manipulate the audio, you can compose various videos together, you can switch from one video stream to another, you can call out to AI services like transcription and translation services. And what Norsk allows you to do is just to say, I'd like to go from SRT and then do something with the audio levels and publish it out. And you just express your desire, and none of the detail kind of gets in the way. And that approach allows you to build really quite sophisticated applications in a very straightforward way. Here's a remote production application built on top of Norsk. Norsk itself is not a remote production app. It's just something that means that building these kinds of apps is very simple. That first view was the sort of scene director view. They take care of the green room. They assemble shots into kind of a storyboard to say, well, initially we'll have a sting and that on its own. And then the next scene after that was Dom or somebody introducing the show. And then the next scene after that is Dom interviewing Tim Siglin or whoever else it might be. And then those scenes, as they get published, are made available to the vision director. The vision director can copy down whichever scene they want into their working space, see all the shots available in the working space, drag shots into preview, and then push them live. And yeah, some of these shots are direct, some of them have got picture in picture, we've got kind of bottom third overlays and all this kind of stuff happening. And this was a pre-existing app. The UI for this is reasonably complex. It's a couple of thousand lines of code. It used to be that the media code associated with this app was many thousands, probably over 10,000 lines of code in order to be able to deliver this. Porting this particular application to Norsk, took, it was either 2 or 3 days, I can't remember exactly how long, and resulted in under 500 lines of media code, because it allowed the person working on the code to describe intent and not have to deal with any of the detail, while at the same time having massive complexity, having massive capability to be able to deliver these kind of very sophisticated capabilities. So that's a kind of 101 of Norsk SDK. Let's jump into Norsk Studio, and rather than show you slides of a no-code environment, I am going to jump in and actually just show you a no-code environment. So let's start from a clean sheet of paper. I don't know why that's there. So the principles behind Norsk Studio are much the same. You've got a whole bunch of inputs, you've got a whole bunch of outputs, and then you've got a whole bunch of things in between. Now, one of the design philosophies that's really important about Norsk Studio is that Norsk Studio is inherently extensible. So Norsk Studio itself is actually entirely open source with a very permissive license. It itself just uses the Norsk SDK. There's no special privileges it has. It's not doing anything behind the scenes that somebody else couldn't get access to. And our view of visual environments is visual environments are fantastic until they're utterly terrible. And so in order to make Norsk Studio a genuinely usable and powerful tool, what you need to do is make it super easy to extend. So if there's a piece of business logic, for example, that isn't there out of the box, it's very, very easy for third parties to add that. And most of these components here that are in this copy of Studio I'm running are of the order of about 10 lines of code, really very, very straightforward. I think the most complex is probably this multi-camera guy that we'll look at in a second. And that's under 100 lines of code still. It's really very straightforward stuff. So let's start with a nice simple example. Let's take something like an SRT source. And we can say what port we're listening on and passphrases and all that kind of stuff. We'll just run with the defaults for now. And let's publish that as WebRTC. And let's also publish that as HLS and Dash. So there are my workers. Now I'm doing the equivalent of those subscriptions that I had in the example I showed from the SDK. But here I could just do that in a nice visual paradigm, just drag some lines around. And if I hit the play button and actually deploy that, and I go over here and start a SRT source, you'll see that the whole thing's kind of sprung to life. I've got some media coming in over SRT. I'm publishing that as WebRTC. I'm also publishing that as HLS. So if I go over to the WebRTC output, then there it is. There's that stream published as WebRTC. And if I go over to the CMAF output, I can do it from the embedded as well. There's that same content published as HLS. And that's multi-publication of various different ultra low latency and here low latency output done from scratch in 10 seconds or so. We have that visualizer I was showing you before. If we point the visualizer at this particular workflow, it says, right, I've got a transport stream coming in over SRT. I'm publishing that as WebRTC. That, as we now know, contains some lies. So if we click on show conversions, what's really going on, it says, well, you sent me some AAC. That's not what really the most appropriate choice. I've turned that into Opus for you. I fixed your encapsulation. In order to publish it as CMAF, it didn't have to do any of that kind of created detail, and away we went. You can jump as far down the rabbit hole as you want to. So if I want to know what's going on inside my Opus encoder, for example, here's what's happening inside the Opus encoder. And if I want to look at the details of the data flowing through that, then we have an audio stream here. It was PID 257 coming in on the from the TS that was carried over SRT. It's at this baud rate and it's stereo and so on and so forth. I can even go all the way down to looking at actual packets flowing through the system and look at PTSs and so on and so forth. So I can very, very easily get to incredibly high levels of detail as to what's going on. So that's the basic concept, but we can be much more ambitious about the kinds of things we put together in that world. So let's go for something along these lines. So here's a workflow where I'm going to have a bunch of cameras all coming in over SRT. They're all coming in multiplexed on the same port with stream IDs here called camera 1, camera 2, and camera 3. So here I've set up 3 cameras all coming in over SRT. I can go ahead and take a preview of camera 1. I can go ahead and take a preview of camera 2 and 3 and so on. If I click on this line here, you can see the details of the subscription. So here, Norsk knows that this guy is publishing 3 cameras. So when you doing a subscription, you can say which of those, is this particular preview responsible for. I can hand all of those signals off to a camera select node, and that camera select node is going to allow me to control which of those I'm currently pushing live. It's also going to provide me some fallback behavior. In a live event, there's a golden rule, which is you always publish. Never, ever, ever don't publish, because you don't want CDNs to start to get 404s and players to have to refresh and all this kind of stuff. So this has been configured so that its fallback behavior is it'll produce 25 frames a second, 720p, just blank slate here, but that could be a file, it could be a logo, it could be whatever else you want. We're going to take the output of that, put a browser overlay on top of it. So here it's just a singular live output, put that through an explicit encode ladder, publish that as HLS and dash, and I'm also going to take a raw preview of, excuse me, the stream itself. So if I hit go, then you'll notice a couple of things. One is I haven't started any SRT sources at this point. So all of these are sort of sitting here saying, well, I'm running and I'm healthy, but better things could be happening. I could be having some output. But despite having not turned on any sources, I'm already publishing. You can see here my live preview is showing that blank slate. And we're already publishing HLS and dash output as a result. And so if I look here, this content here is just the blank slate. What we'll be publishing over here will also contain the singular live overlay. So if I bring that up, there it is. There's that same content, but with the overlay put on top of it. So I'm going to just stick that picture in picture and go back here. Let me go start some sources. So there's camera 1, there's camera 2, there's camera 3. So we've now fed it some streams, and we're getting live feedback, in the studio environment as to what's going on. So I've got these various different cameras. If I click on this camera select, before I would have had a kind of design time thing. You're saying how many sources and where do I want to get them from and what should my fallback be. But now at runtime, it's saying, actually, I know about all of these sources. So let's go take a look at source 3. I think that's me talking at Streaming Media a while back. Let's make that one active. And what you'll see as a result is, having made it active, it goes, a second later, we're just dropping a JPEG in once a second. Oh, let me, sorry, let me just mute this guy, because that's very confusing. There we go. I thought I was heckling my own demonstration, so apologies for that. So what we saw there, as I selected a particular camera, was about a second later, we're just dropping a JPEG once a second in these previews. You saw that here, and then about a second or two after that, it'll appear in the low latency HLS output, because end-to-end latency is down to sort of 2 or 3 seconds there. So if I go ahead and do the same with camera 2, that's a preview of what camera 2 is doing. If I make that active, you'll see it here. And then a second or two later, you'll see it out here. Now, again, extensibility and so on is very much sort of built into Studio from the ground up. So this camera select, it's kind of nice having a control surface embedded into Studio, but you might want a richer user experience for that. And it's very easy to add those to those kind of nodes. So here, if I click on its little call out box, it says, well, here are all the cameras I know about. I can preview. If I click on one of those individually, I can preview it. If I'm having previewed it, I can then decide to take it live or not. Or I can change my mind, go to camera 2. We'll take that one live. It'll go here, then it goes to there. Go back to there. You'll see it change here. And then a second or two later, you'll see it in the low latency HLS output. So this is this particular workflow is something we built for a customer, I don't know, 6 years ago or so, and building it from as highly capable media engineers from scratch, based on our own kind of toolkit capability, took a team of engineers quite some months to put together. With Studio, you can start to build those kinds of experiences from scratch in literally a couple of minutes or something. It takes to if you want the boxes to line up nicely, it takes about that long. And one of the questions, what's super important on top of that is the extensibility. So for example, this processor here, this cascading switch, it's a bit like the camera select, but you can drag lots of sources into it and it will give you a high availability output. So first of all, you can configure up a fallback behavior. Then you can say, here's a list of video sources that I would like to publish in priority order. So I'll have my primary and then my secondary, and if neither of those is available, I'll fall back to my, I'll go to my fallback behavior. And if primary is available, it'll use that. If secondary is, if primary isn't, but secondary is, it'll use that, and so on. And one of our customers said, well, what happens if I want to have a business rule where if I'm on secondary, I don't fall back to primary, if more than once a minute or something, and currently that cascading switch component is, I don't know, 20 or so lines of code. Extending that business logic to say I won't fall back more than once a minute, it makes it go up to 22 lines of code or 25 lines of code or something like that. That extensibility is built in from the ground up, so that you get a visual paradigm that anybody can use. Non-programmers can construct extremely capable media workflows, but development teams can then very, very easily extend that. It also makes it very natural to come up with language that is appropriate to a particular use case. So for example, maybe you've got sources in Media Connect on AWS and you want to be able to start processing those. If I drag a Media Connect component on, then it'll go off to my particular account, look to see what, I don't have any at the moment, Media Connect endpoints I have active, and then allow me to drop that, select the connection I want from a drop down. Under the covers, it's an SRT source, but the way we publish that and the way we can present that in a visual paradigm, puts that same capability into kind of business language or into domain-specific language that that the user should then be very familiar with. So that's a sort of 10,000-foot view of the capabilities that Norsk has. Hand in hand with that, one of the things we take incredibly seriously is automated efficiency. There's some very compelling hardware starting to come onto the market right now. ASICs that will be able to deliver certainly tens of 1080p outputs in one card, and those kind of numbers are starting to push towards 100, which means that in 1 or 2 use of space, I can easily construct servers capable of delivering tens or even hundreds of channels at very, very low energy consumption and extremely low cost per frame. So we support out of the box some of the AMD hardware, the NetInt hardware, and of course GPUs like NVIDIA and so on. Already talked about our capability with respect to open telemetry and how easy it is to sort of plug the kind of metrics that I was showing you earlier in the workflows into monitoring and so on systems. And that combination of extensibility via the SDK, controllability via the sort of monitoring and so on interfaces, and expressiveness through the visual paradigm, I think makes for a very compelling capability. So I'm currently kind of teasing Norsk Studio in particular. It's going to get launched formally at NAB this year, and really excited to see where our customers, what kinds of solutions our customers build with it. So with that end, that's the kind of 10,000-foot view. More than happy to take questions.
Well, great. So we don't have any questions from the audience yet in the Q&A, although I encourage everyone to ask away with whatever questions you have. It's a great presentation. And I just think it's great to see Norsk already kind of brought the barrier down to low code, and now you're giving more non-programmers a seat at the table. So I think that's great. I just had a couple of questions. One was I saw in my LinkedIn feed that a Norse developer gave a presentation last week on the emerging media over quick protocol. There's a fair amount of buzz about media over quick right now. So how does it fit into a Norse workflow, and And how does it fit in, into the overall streaming video ecosystem?
Yeah, Media over Quick's kind of an interesting space right now, and one that we think is going to make big ripples within the sector. So yeah, that the talk you probably saw mentioned was from Mike English, who
Yeah.
joined the team a few months ago, having been a kind of major contributor to some of the very early work done in the Media over Quick space. And the promise of Media over Quick is you've got a whole spectrum of capabilities. Yeah, you've got sort of RTMP for contribution, and you've got things like HLS and Dash for um, medium to sort of high latency delivery, and then you've got things like WebRTC for real-time delivery. Media over Quick presents the promise of being able to do all of that using the same base technology, and very importantly, to be able to dial latency up and down, from real-time comms, a couple hundred milliseconds, through to tens of milliseconds and so on, in a way that's very CDN friendly, and it means that CDNs, right now, if you want to go to real-time communications, you have to have a WebRTC centric CDN. You can't just have CDN automatic, a typical HTTP based CDN suddenly provide a WebRTC service without them having to invest very heavily. What we're seeing in the CDN market already is a move to Quick and HTTP3 and so on, and Media over Quick brings the promise that you'll be able to cache and scale very, very low latency all the way through to contribution and high latency type outputs. So we are using it for a couple of things internally already. One is previews. So we have a capability called Frame Store, which allows you can record an arbitrary stream, be that media, or video or audio or subtitles or any of those kinds of things, and record that, provide live to VOD and kind of frame accurate cut type services from it. You can also excitingly use it as a camera as part of a live event. So if I want to do an in-play highlight of what was on camera 7 from 15 seconds ago, that's the kind of thing that in both Studio and the SDK, this kind of really advanced capability is suddenly super easy to do. And we're using Media over Quick as part of the sort of scrubbing and discovery process, so you can get to exactly where you want really nicely. That allows us to be both ends of the line. The source at that point is Frame Store going through Norsk, and then we get control over the player. I think it's going to be a good couple of years before you'll be able to deliver Media over Quick into an environment where you don't get control over the player, just because if you've got very large audiences and lots of different players, and I don't think support's going to be that widespread. But Media over Quick has the opportunity to really disrupt the market, so we're excited about where that's leading.
Okay, no, but not so quick, QUICK.
Exactly that. Yes, well said.
And so let's see, Beth Rose and a question. And this refers specifically to the presentation. She said, so these are different live stream video feeds that you can bounce back and forth from. If so, if you have different camera angles, can you do business rules as to which you want to show up, and what time to mix it up?
Exactly that. And so if we go back up to the, let's go over to the docs. But so these are just publicly available. If you go to docs.norsk.video, then these are the SDK docs. We have a whole bunch of different inputs, have a whole bunch of different outputs, and you get and then a whole bunch of processes, one of which, for example, is the stream switch or compose if I want to do picture in picture and so on. If something interesting happens, your code will get can get a callback. That's sort of, so interesting might be a SCSI-35 marker arriving on one of the cameras. At which point you might want to inject a SCSI-35 marker downstream in the HLS so that ad servers and so on can do their thing. Or it might well be that you've got metadata associated with the cameras, and I've got a football match and I only want to follow Messi. I want to automatically go to the camera that's currently pointing at Messi. So that you can trigger that behavior, which it might be a callback from the stream, it might be a new PID coming, in one of the TSs, or it might just be, a human being pressing a button, or some event based on a timer. At which point, you'd swap, you'd construct a new picture and so on. But yeah, in principle, absolutely, you can do that either kind of mixed to the kind of primary output that you're doing. You could obviously construct multiple different primary outputs. So we're exploring some interesting use cases where we're doing we'll at the core produce maybe 5 or 6 different personalized outputs, and then there's kind of extra personalization with metadata and overviews happening in the player, at which point you're starting for relatively low investment, able to produce literally hundreds of different personalized variants of content. Some really interesting work happening and emerging at the moment with things like KLV metadata, where you're getting richer and richer descriptions of what's in the stream, so that then you can do automated decisioning. Yes, some of that really cool stuff that the OBS bot, with AI cameras and so on and so forth, if that's starting to produce AI metadata streams downstream of that, then again we can use that to start to trigger automated events in the downstream media processing. So, but absolutely, people like NASDAQ absolutely have custom business rules around if they're in the business of financial fair disclosure. What's really important there is the audio and the slides. It's a bonus if you get to see how pretty the chief exec looks today, but actually it's the audio and the slides that matter. And as a result, they've got business rules that say we'll take the primary video if it's available, we'll take the secondary video if not, we'll make a phone call, just a regular PSTN phone call back to the event, because it's the audio, and then we'll fill in with a logo or whatever it is as a fallback. And so the ability to construct custom business logics around that behavior is precisely what we want people to be able to do. That means that when you're experiencing this as part of a notified event, you get the best user experience that they can do, and that user experience is different to the ones that a different vendor in the same space might be providing.
Okay. Good. And a question from Ruben Casadia. I've observed that not all parameters are accessible for configuration. For example, when setting up an SRT feed, the latency buffer parameter is crucial for adjusting the amount of ARQ retransmissions. Will this parameter be made available for configuration?
So if we just go to the docs, we've got something like SRT input or output. If we go to the input, then we have a whole bunch of input settings. There's some examples on it. I think even in Studio, let's drag one in. I don't know the answer to this. It's not there. Okay. If we go to the SDK, then it absolutely is. So this is still in pre-release, so good spot, Ruben. That probably is something that you'd want to be able to configure. But if we go to look at the SRT input settings, then absolutely you can change minimum connect times and the such like. So yes, absolutely, that is part of the capability. And yes, good spot. That needs to be in there in Studio as well.
Okay, and then a quick related question from Lynn Rowe. She asks, how about the Cisco Quilt cache model versus Quick?
There's some interesting stuff happening, across you have standards like HESP and so on as well. Now this is a judgment call. One of the reasons I think HESP is going to be disruptive is it's the direction that with things like HTTP3, the underpinning technology is happening anyway, and you get some there are reasons why the ecosystem is moving in that direction, and media over quick is kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm nothing against Cisco or HESP or anything of those along those lines. There are other ways of attacking the space. What I think makes media over quick particularly persuasive is that I think the requirements to enable media over quick are going to happen anyway, at which point it's less of a commercial risk.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, Adrian. This has been fantastic. I wish I could get to all the questions, but got to wrap up now. So let's see. Before we go, just want to announce the winner of the Amazon $50 gift card for the walk-up music. The track, as many people got, was Frank Zappa, Peaches on Regalia, and the winner was Q Williams. So Q, you'll be getting something in your email letting you know how to collect your gift card. And join us right back here at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, 1 o'clock Pacific Time. We got one more great session a day, reality check, AI's role in streaming. So thanks again to Norsk and Obspot. It's been a great session. Thank you.
Thank you.